This is Newsroom. Hello and welcome from Johannesburg in South Africa. I'm Anine Dormel, standing in for Evan Janssen. The show is live and broadcast from our studios in Auckland Park. We're also streaming live on YouTube with the entire show available on our YouTube channel. Today we look back at the DA Congress in Port Elizabeth, where Mmusi Maimane became the first black leader of the party yesterday. More than 15,000 people gathered in Cape Town over the weekend for the Global Cannabis March. And we conclude our discussion around euthanasia and close with a look at the 2015 tourism in Durban. But first, let's have a look at the day's top stories. Ensuring that the DA wins strategic metros and an increase in its support base is now the focus of new DA leader Mmusi Maimane. Maimane said over the weekend that the party has 4 metros in its sight in the run-up to next year's elections. This after he became the DA's first black leader yesterday by beating Wilmot James with an overwhelming 90% of the votes. Maimane also said part of his focus will be on ensuring that the DA is united.
We must build a party that is united around our values, that shares those values, that takes it forward. We must never congregate behind an individual, because once you do that, then I must say my camp elected me today and another camp didn't. I'm not going out to settle any scores. I've got to build a united party. I have the responsibility now of being able to lead with some people who even opposed me. But I've always built a team like that, and we'll be going around all the provinces making sure everybody comes on board so we can take this party forward.
National Director of Public Prosecutions, Rolisi Hassana's previous brushes with the law are expected to be in the spotlight today. That's when a commission of inquiry into his fitness to hold office gets underway in Centurion. The commission was established by President Jacob Zuma in February after it emerged that Hassana did not get a security clearance because of previous criminal charges against him. 8 COSATU affiliates will today apply in the Johannesburg High Court for another order compelling Labour Federation to convene a special national congress in July. The union sympathetic to Metal Workers Union NUMSA say a national congress will help return COSATU to what they call its rightful owners. Meanwhile, COSATU President Zuma Putin has labelled the court challenge opportunistic and a waste of money. Government will know today whether public sector unions have accepted an improved salary increase offer. Unions rejected a previous offer of 5.8%, but government subsequently raised its offer to 7%. The unions earlier demanded 10%. Unions also wanted a 600 Rand increase in their housing allowance rather than the 200 Rand government was offering. COSATU-aligned unions will engage with independent unions before their representatives meet today with state negotiators. And Minister of Tourism Derek Hanekom says the country's recent spate of xenophobic attacks has not been a threat to this year's tourism in Durban. 24 destinations across Africa have been represented on the trade show floor at the Indaba in Durban. The weekend saw a minister's dialogue with various tourism ministers from the rest of the African continent.
It really had a very marginal effect on this Indaba 2015. So we didn't see massive pullouts at all. In fact, one or two who were a bit concerned about their own safety, if you like, but really marginal. And the people who are here, you can't believe how positive they are.
Now back to our top story today. Newly elected DA leader Mmusi Maimane says he will not be anyone's puppet. He was responding to critics who said he wasn't experienced enough to lead the official opposition. Maimane won an overwhelming majority in the leadership contest at the party's elective conference in Port Elizabeth yesterday.
And the winner is your new leader is Mmusi. The new face of the Democratic Alliance. Immensely popular, he beat his opponent overwhelmingly.
Here in this party, there will be no room for those who seek to divide or those who want to mobilize on the basis of race.
his adversary gracefully accepted defeat.
I mean, the party has decided on who's leader, and I'm very proud of my campaign. I ran a very good campaign. I raised some important issues around transparency when it comes to campaign finance and having open debates, and I'm very happy about that. I had good support. The party's decided who's the new leader, and now it's time to unite.
Quick out of the blocks, Maimane added his voice to the furore following Alistair Sparks' comments that apartheid architect Hendrik Verwoerd was an intelligent man.
The system of racial classification devised by Hendrik Verwoerd was evil and deplorable. And ultimately, we cannot stay trapped in that way of thinking. We must triumph over the evil of apartheid by building a new bridge into a new future. We must not remain Democrats, victims of our past, but we must indeed believe in a better tomorrow for all South Africans.
Former party leaders believe Maimane's ascendance signals a new dawn.
A new chapter, a new era for South Africa. The Democratic Alliance is going and growing and winning, and that is good news for South Africa and our democracy, for everybody's rights, for everybody's freedom, fairness and opportunity for every single citizen of South Africa.
I'm absolutely excited and thrilled to the outcome of this Congress. I think it's been the greatest one I've ever attended, and I've been going to Congresses since 1960.
This elective Congress has been described as a landmark. The only uncontested position was that of James Self, the Executive Federal Chairperson. The incoming leaders are Musi Maimane, Leader, Athol Cholib, Federal Chair. Deputy Federal Chairpersons are Ivan Meyer, Refilo Ntseke and Desiree van der Walt. Musi's rise has been nothing short of meteoric. From being the DA's mayoral candidate for Johannesburg to being the poster boy for the party's Gauteng premiership candidacy during the 2014 elections, he went on to take over from Lindiwe Mazibuko as the parliamentary leader. He now faces the challenge of continuing with the party's growing trend. Yolisa Njamela, SABC News in Port Elizabeth.
Now, our SABC assignments editor Tommy Dixon was at the Congress over the weekend, and he joins us now from Port Elizabeth to give us just a bit of what transpired during the historic occasion. Tommy, thank you for joining us today.
Good morning. Thank you very much, Anina.
Okay. Tommy, if we can just start with, we know that this was a very historic moment for the DA. They saw their first black leader, but just talk us through some of the other resolutions that were brought up during the Congress over the entire weekend.
Well, indeed, it was a watershed Congress for the Democratic Alliance. Never has it ever happened before that the DA stood at such a historical moment when it had to elect a black leader for the very first time, and the excitement was really huge at that Congress. Both sides, black and white, people saw this as a great moment, not only for the DA, but also for South Africa as a whole. And indeed, it was not only the leadership that they were busy with there. There were a whole range of resolutions that they have adopted that deals with different sectors of our economy, from economic development to addressing issues of the remnants of the apartheid system and the damage that it has caused in many communities around the country, issues of health, including issues of education, even the price of condoms. They were discussed there. We know that there's a resolution that was passed really to say that government must take VAT out of the prices of condoms so as to make sure that we deal effectively with the carnage of HIV and AIDS in our country. They also took resolutions around the economy, saying that they reject nationalization of mines, but they do want to see that the taxes that are being paid by the mining companies, actually that money is used effectively to ensure that they do develop and empower people, particularly where the mining companies are. They took resolutions about the fact that so many people in the rural areas, they still lack access to proper health facilities, so they need that to be looked at. They took resolutions around the fact that some people, they still go to schools that are not in good conditions. That has to be addressed. They took resolutions about the electoral system in our country. They do argue that the electoral system in our country needs to be changed in the manner in which it is right now, so as to have a system that allows people to elect their own representatives, whether at the municipal level or at the provincial level, even at the national level, even up to electing their own president of the country. So it's a raft of resolutions that they have taken, really covering all sectors of our economy to ensure that they're going to use as a battle plan as they move now out of the Congress, beginning to do the real work of servicing the people that they need to attract.
Tommy, if we can just quickly touch on one of those resolutions, I think one of the first ones you mentioned was economic development. We saw last year how passionate the DA was about this when they led that march for 6 million jobs. Any indication of like what they are planning to do now moving forward with Mmusi Maimane at the front?
Well, they did take a resolution that confirms and actually emphasizes the point that what government needs to continue to subsidize companies that provide empowerment programs to the disadvantaged members of our communities. They still support that. I think they're still going to go ahead with that, even though you do know that there's still some difficulties within government to really embrace entirely this whole idea. So that is still going to continue, but also other economic programs that they said they're going to unleash now going forward. Remember, they are now getting into the phase of campaigning for the local government elections that is coming up. So they're going to come up with targeted economic programs that will fit the different communities where they will be campaigning in, including the Nelson Mandela Metro here. So we wait to see exactly those other initiatives that they're going to come up with. But broadly, the issue of empowering the disadvantaged, they do support that, but totally reject the issue of quotas, that you must have certain members of racial groups given specific or preferential treatment as just because they belong to that particular race. They reject that completely. But like I said, I mean, we're going to see as they begin to unleash their own programs of economic development in line with their campaigns for the local government elections.
Then, Sami, just looking at the resolution the DA made with fighting racism, isn't making inroads with the black communities a priority for the DA? And let's just touch on what Mr. Maimane said about that over the weekend.
That's a very good question, because, I mean, really, the whole point really of having Maimane to be the leader of the Democratic Alliance is actually centered on this theory that Mmusi Maimane will now be able to attract black voters, in particular young black voters. Now, it's something that he has to prove that he will be able to do, because it's not obvious that he will actually succeed in doing that. We're not underestimating the power that he has, the charisma that he has to energize young black people. We've seen that, I mean, here in the Eastern Cape, the young people there belonging to a student organization affiliated to the Democratic Alliance, they won SRC elections in a traditionally stronghold of the African National Congress. So we do not underestimate that. But it's not going to be plain sailing. It's a challenge that he will have to face, and to say that how does he begin to recruit young people. You remember that in some communities, especially here in the Eastern Cape, I mean, there's still a deep seated loyalty for the ruling party, the African National Congress. So it will take a lot of effort to actually convince people to change. And and vote for the Democratic Alliance. It can't just be that because he's black and therefore people will flock to the DA. So it's something that really they really need to work hard for. But he's got a lot of opportunities to do so. But he needs to come up with proper plans in terms of how he's going to do that.
Yes, Tammy, and we're definitely going to have to wait and see what those plans are. But I thank you very much for joining us this morning from Port Elizabeth, just giving us a wrap on what happened over the weekend. That is our assignments editor, Tammy Dixon. Now, the newly elected DA leader has promised that his priority is to unite the party after being elected leader by an overwhelming margin at the party's Congress to succeed Helen Zille. Musi Maimane says the DA's success isn't dependent on individuals. SABC contributing editor Vuyo Mvoko managed to talk to the new man at the helm of the Democratic Alliance.
We must build a party that is united around our values, that shares those values, that takes it forward. We must never congregate behind an individual, because once you do that, then I must say my camp elected me today and another camp didn't. I'm not going out to settle any scores. I've got to build a united party. I have the responsibility now of being able to lead with some people who even opposed me. But I've always built a team like that, and we'll be going around all the provinces making sure everybody comes on board so we can take this party forward.
Have you spoken to Dr. James?
The first time it was really on stage. I haven't had an opportunity to sit down with him and unpack him. But I think for him and his team, I wish them all the best. I thought they campaigned hard. It was tough at times. But it's good to come out on the other side of it victorious. It's good to come with an overwhelming majority of people who say to us, we want to take this party forward.
Now, you are, of course, taking over from someone who was very strong, who did shape the party in her own image in so many respects. Are you not worried that perhaps you're going to sort of live in her shadow, in Helen Zille's shadow?
Helen Zille led in a particular way. She led in a way that's totally different to mine. She certainly has left with me certain key values. She works hard, and now I want to commit to working hard. And certainly in any election and going out to raise money, all of that, we got to focus on doing well. But I certainly will lead differently to her, and will bring my own style and presence to the party that perhaps is different to what she had. And so I respect, I think she's contributed immensely to this party. Now my job is to come back and say, how do I take this party in a direction we'd like to put forward, and how do we make sure this party thrives, and some of the objectives that we've put forward.
Well, your rise has been fast, quite spectacular within DA ranks. A lot of people thinking perhaps you are way too young for the sort of challenges a growing party like the DA has to face to you. What do you think of that?
I think it's the best time to lead. I'm not ageist. I think we're into an era now where leadership is about captaining very good teams, being able to pull together different leaders, different skills, different experiences, and then bringing them together to take this party forward. If you look at Tony Leon, when he took over this party, he was only a few years older than me. So there comes a moment in life where you say, are you willing to contest for South Africa? And that's why I put my hand up, because I felt it was important enough for me to fight. For people like my cousin who don't have work, who are unemployed, for a non-racial South Africa. And so there comes a point where you put up your hand and you say, I'll step into that role. We have a lot to learn. Nobody said we're perfect, but certainly believe that we've got the best team around to be able to take this party forward.
Well, it's now time to take a look at your tweets. Please remember to send us your views on Twitter at SABC Newsroom. Today you are talking about the DA, and Mike says another DA Congress highlighting. The highlight for me was Tony Leon's speech yesterday. Real vintage with knobs on, thoroughly inspiring. We have Tabu saying the newly elected DA leader Musi Maimane set plans to move around the country to sell the party's new values charter. Hashtag politics, hashtag DA. Njabulo comparing Musi Maimane to Mandela is taking it a bit too far. Hashtag over excitement. Yeah. And Moses says, if you don't see that I am black, then you don't see me at all. Musi Maimane, one is nearly drawn to party politics with this quote. Gladwin says, congratulations, Missy. I've always had my money, my money on you. A bit of a Floyd Mayweather reference over there. Right, we'll take a look now at your tweet pick of the day. And today's picture of the day comes from Chris Preen, captioned the Cannabis March. And we know that march took place in Cape Town over the weekend. There you can see thousands took place, and it says hashtag Daggamarch, hashtag Cape Town, hashtag Longstreet. It's time to take a look at the front pages from around the globe. Starting in Europe, the Times reports plans by Brussels to force Britain to take an intense of thousands of refugees pulled from the Mediterranean have saddled David Cameron with the first battle of his new premiership. Then moving to China, the South China Morning Post says that the trial date for China's former security Shah has been postponed amid a push by the authorities to build a stronger case against him. The trial was originally set for late April, but that has now been pushed back. And then the International New York Times says that the Cuban president has praised Pope Francis for helping broker the diplomatic law of the United States and promised a warm welcome for Francis when he goes to Cuba in September. Let's take a look at what's happening around the country today. We start in Pretoria, where the inquiry into National Director of Public Prosecutions, Mxolisi Nkosana, is expected to begin at the South African Law Reform Commission today. Nkosana is accused of not disclosing an acquittal on a murder charge as well as other charges. Then in Port Elizabeth, the state is expected to approach the East London Magistrates Court to ask for the withdrawal of the bail for 3 suspects accused of fraud and money laundering during the Nelson Mandela funeral service in December 2013. And then in Polokwane, a university student suspected of murder, attempted murder, robbery, rape, kidnapping and assault is expected to appear in court today. Well, it's time to take a break. We'll be back in just a minute. Welcome back. You're watching Newsroom. Now, about 15,000 people gathered in Cape Town at the weekend for the Global Cannabis March. The legalization of cannabis in South Africa has been in the spotlight, with many taking to social media sites using the hashtag Dagga debate to call for the drug to be decriminalized. More recently, roundtable discussions held by government, the Central Drug Authority and other stakeholders have also furthered the debate. In the rest of the world, the legalization of cannabis is fast gaining momentum, with the conservative state of Texas in the U.S. the latest to move to legalize cannabis. Last week, the nation of Ecuador put forward a plan to decriminalize all narcotics after the UN admitted that the war on drugs has failed. Joining us today to tell us what the impact of our own discussions on cannabis have and will be is the Deputy Chairperson of the Central Drug Authority, Mr. David Bayeva, and in Durban we are joined by the head of the National Cannabis Working Group, Andre du Plessis. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us today.
Good morning.
David, you are in studio with me, but I want the reaction of both of you, please, just to this big march that we saw over the weekend. 15,000 people, really, that is a lot of people, you know, calling for all forms of cannabis in South Africa to be decriminalized. What is your take as the Central Drug Authority when you see those numbers come out in support of this cause?
Clearly, from the Central Drug Authority's perspective, we are very aware of the fact that this is something that needs to be investigated and needs to be investigated very, very seriously, recognizing that this is a trend that is taking place not only in South Africa but internationally. We've seen the issues that have occurred in other parts of the world as well, and we need to look at it in terms of our perspective, in terms of what is going to be best for our own country. So clearly, we know that there is a move to look at the decriminalization, as well as the fact that we are looking at the medicinal use. And all of those issues are something that the CDA is quite prepared and willing to negotiate, and that was the reason for initiating the first debate on the medicinal use of cannabis.
Yeah. Andre, then if I can ask you, we see this move gaining momentum across the world. I mean, how long is it going to take for South Africa? What are your views on this, also looking at this march from the weekend?
Well, the march is not alone in the planet. There was 800 cities around the globe that participated. In Mexico City, there was 150,000. In Medellin, Colombia, 120,000. And it carries on like that. New York was large, Paris, Rome, Italy, they were all large. Clearly, the world is much more advised with regard to cannabis than, unfortunately, the CDA and the Department of Social Development put forward at the roundtable. At the roundtable, clearly there was an agenda and a path that was being set. The third person to talk, for example, was a teenage self-confessed drug addict. And I found this very sad because other guests that were invited to talk at the roundtable were, in fact, doctors and professors and psychologists that combined have 4 or 5 times the life experience than the teenager that was given the floor.
David, if I can get your reaction to what we saw being discussed at the roundtable discussion. I know, as Andrew has raised, he had some concerns of who was invited to talk. What was the main purpose of it? And from the CDA's side, what do you think that you managed to achieve?
I think that we must be very aware of the fact that the roundtable that was held was to look at one particular issue only. This is a very, very complex and a very large debate that needs to take place, and we can only do it in small chunks. The first issue that we looked at was the medicinal use of cannabis and whether there was reason for us to look at allowing people to use medicinal use of cannabis for health reasons. And clearly what came out of that was the fact that, yes, there are incidents where there have been reported advantages, but there are also instances where there is a tremendous amount of risk attached to it. And we need to now discern exactly what is going to be the best in the way forward for our South African population. Recognizing the fact that, yes, in other parts of the world it has been allowed, we are looking at the evidence that is now being produced based on the type of approaches that have been adopted elsewhere and to see whether it actually matches our own requirements. We've got to be very, very careful about the fact that we are not talking about, at this stage, the decriminalization or legalization of cannabis, which is a further debate that is going to be taking place. So the roundtable, the initiation of this debate, was started with the medicinal use of cannabis only. So all of the other issues were side issues, and clearly we are going to be coming back to all of that because this is a very convoluted issue that needs to be looked at in depth. And we can only do it by dealing with one issue at a time. So clearly there will be further debates taking place.
Andre, are you then saying then, as the Cannabis Working Group, you are not going to be happy with this being such a long, drawn-out process?
Well, I understand the process, and the Central Drug Authority is mandated by the Parliamentary Committee on Health to have these roundtable discussions. My concern is that at a themed event that was paid for by government, there was more spoken about opioids than there was of cannabis. Throughout the event, there was a conflation of other drugs with cannabis, and a lot of the evidence that was presented was, in fact, rather questionable, which I find rather sad. And at the end of the roundtable, the statement that was brought out was that the Departments of Social Development and the Central Drug Authority are finally going to produce their position paper. We presented a cannabis position paper to them in 2013, and yet at the conference, none of that was even made available or presented. we were stuck with a very strange start and a very strange definition of cannabis. Is it a tree plant, leaf, seed? Unfortunately, I have to say that even for a first start, we couldn't even get past the basics of cannabis. And I think it is a sad showing that so much money was spent and that we hadn't even passed the first part of cannabis. Is it a plant? Is it a tree? Is it a leaf? Is it a seed? That's very unfortunate. I don't think we're moving fast enough. If you compare us to New York, for example, that is forging ahead with business, and in the earlier instance we saw D.A. Musi Mayamani's cousin is unemployed. In New York you would have a job, and it's unfortunate that here in South Africa those people that you see marching in Cape Town and clearly have access to cannabis in Cape Town, you know, the discussion of medicinal only or this only, the horse is bolted. There it goes, out the stable, you know, it's gone. To now try break this cannabis discussion down into neat little pocket-sized issues is not actually grasping the nettle and dealing with cannabis, the plant in its entirety, and in the reality as you see on your TV screen right now, it is in South Africa. People have access to cannabis. They use it. They work it despite it being a Schedule 7 substance. And, you know, in all the marches around the world, nobody dropped dead at any of the marches. There was no violence. There was no aggression at any of these marches. So all these harms that keep being brought up again and again and again, they ring hollow. And you know what? These people marching know that they ring hollow. So, you know, I don't know what to say about that. But I wasn't impressed with the roundtable, and I'm concerned that the conclusion drawn by the roundtable might actually, this is the thing that's going to inform the Parliamentary Health Committee, and they did a bad job to start with.
Okay, well, Peter, if I can come back to you, we cannot forget that government is involved currently with these discussions, the Department of Social Development. I know that at some stage we're going to have to invite them to the show to actually talk to them directly, but the CDA has been talking to them quite a lot. Where are they in terms of what they feel needs to be done? How urgently is this matter to them?
This is a major concern, based on the fact that there is a bill that is going to be debated in Parliament very, very soon. And for that reason, we are very, very concerned about making some resolution and making it applicable to our country. What is disingenuous about the statement that has just been made is the fact that the results, but there are no results. The CDA was very particular in order to show its neutrality and in order to show that we were not going to be influencing the debate. We employed the services of the Health Science Research Council through researchers to actually draw up, as a result of the debate that was taking place, what conclusions were then to be arrived at. It's not the CDA that is going to be making that decision. We have given it out purposely to an independent research council in order to give us their findings. So this is going to be based on what is done independently and without any influence from anybody other than the researchers themselves and what has been put forward as research material for them to be able to then advise the Central Drug Authority on what further steps to be taken towards initiating the program with government.
I would like to just end with both your views then on, we know there's a global movement for this. In Texas, a proposal seeking full legalization of cannabis on religious grounds to be passed. Are we not in South Africa, aren't we going to lag with this issue?
I think that it's important to understand that we are very, very focused on this as a major concern at the moment. Unfortunately, part of the delay that might have been initiated was because of the xenophobia, which was also part of what the Department of Social Development had to deal with as a major, major concern.
David, the Central Drug Authority is 11 years late in presenting its position paper. Please don't bring xenophobia into this as a form of excuse for being late in doing your job. Please.
I'm not going to debate that with Andre because he knows very well that this is just taking advantage of the advantage that he might have in terms of spreading his own propaganda. The bottom line is that we are dealing with it. The bottom line is that we are concerned about it. The bottom line is that we also have a responsibility to ensure that whatever decisions are taken are based on scientific evidence that is available, for which we have employed the researchers to do the necessary for us.
All right. Well, Andrew, I'm not sure if you have any closing comments.
I think that's all I got to say.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us in studio today. I'm sure this, as we know, is a discussion that we're going to continue having on Newsroom with the hashtag Dagga Debate. Please send your views to SABC Newsroom on Twitter at SABC Newsroom. Now, let's just take a look at what you have to say on our social media sites. Please remember to send your views on Twitter to at SABC Newsroom. Tsatsi is saying at SABC Newsroom, Dagga Debate, legalize it. That is the view of Tsatsi. Another comment over there says, there's something called the Dagga March. Why was I not there? Euphemistic says, for medical purposes, it would be good if we are all allowed to harvest weed in our own gardens. Hashtag Dagga March. And Boring Jaden says, it's time to legalize weed in South Africa. Hashtag Dagga March. These are all tweets that have been coming in from over the weekend. There you can see some of the large groups that have gathered for the global Dagga March, or the global march for cannabis to be legalized over the weekend. Now let's just have a look at what is happening, or keeping to social media sites. Your tweet of the day, and it comes from Russell Grinko, who says, so how does the right to end your own life suddenly become a victory? Euthanasia. Remember, later in the show we will be having another look at that ruling from last week. Now let's just take a look at what is happening on our Newsroom Facebook page today. There you'll see the newly elected DA leader, Mmusi Maimane, won an overwhelming majority vote for leadership at the party's elective conference yesterday, despite critics saying that he was not experienced enough. Maimane responded by saying he will not be anyone's puppet. Then, since Nigeria's army began clearing large areas of the country from Boko Haram, some of the 1.5 million internally displaced people have started returning home, but thousands could now face severe food shortages. And in China, we see Russian troops have been invited to march in a parade in Beijing in September to commemorate the end of World War II. Remember, you can find all of those stories on our Newsroom Facebook page, or visit our SABC website at www.sabc.co.za/news. Well, it's time for us to go to a break. We'll be back in a moment.
Dudes and dudettes, did you know that us young people make up more than like 1/3 of South Africa's population, but only like 1/4 of the voters? I mean, what's up with that? We're the ones who can make a difference. You, me, everybody. Register and make it happen. Cheers, dudes.
Welcome back. You're watching Newsroom on SABC News. Let's just have a look at the stories making headlines today. Ensuring that the DA wins strategic metros and an increase in its support base is now the new focus of DA leader Mmusi Maimane. Maimane said over the weekend that the party has 4 metros in its sight in the run-up to next year's elections. This after he became the DA's first black leader yesterday by beating Wilmot James with an overwhelming 90% of the votes. Maimane also warned President Jacob Zuma that the party will continue the legal fight to have corruption charges against them reinstated. 8 COSATU affiliates will today apply in the Johannesburg High Court for an order compelling the Labour Federation to convene a special National Congress in July. The union, sympathetic to Metal Workers Union NUMSA, say a National Congress will help return COSATU what they call its rightful owners. Meanwhile, COSATU President Zuma Putin has labelled the court challenge opportunistic and a waste of money. Where do I go now? The 2015 Tourism Indaba. The newly elected DA leadership has resolved to fight racism. The party has adopted a number of resolutions ranging from pursuing equal economic opportunities to the price of condoms.
The battle plan towards the 2019 national elections, 30 resolutions divided in 3 segments: freedom, fairness and opportunity. The DA resolved to reject unfair race-based discrimination and mobilizing support on the basis of race.
We don't unite behind a person. We unite behind values and a vision for this party. I'm not building a party for Musi Maimane. I'm building a party that shares those values of freedom, fairness and opportunity.
On health, the party wants VAT to be removed from condoms and to ensure poor people have access to health facilities. To promote fairness, the DA want amendments to make the electoral system more accountable. It rejects quotas in favor of open opportunity for all. It endorses incentives to companies implementing empowerment programs, but it wants them to invest more in their employees' skills.
We're going to champion non-racialism under Musi Maimane. I'm convinced that the leadership team that has been elected represents all the people of this country, and together, if we go to the people and say to them, this is the kind of party and government that you can have that will give you all equal treatment and all will get open, fair, transparent government.
The party has rejected nationalization of mines, but it says part of mining taxes must be used in communities where mining takes place. The DA admits that its first challenge now is to improve its trust relationship with new voters, especially in the sought-after market of black communities. Tammy Dixon, SABC News in Port Elizabeth.
Now, 8 COSATU affiliates will today apply in the Johannesburg High Court for an order compelling the Labour Federation to convene a special National Congress in July. The unions, sympathetic to Metal Workers Union NUMSA, say a National Congress will help return to COSATU to what they call its rightful owners.
An embattled Labour Federation weakened by internal factions. The 8 affiliates say COSATU President Zuma Putin's failure to convene a special Congress has worsened the crisis.
No one or any group of individuals must be allowed to water down, to dilute, or to destroy the constitution of COSATU in the manner that Comrade Dumo seeks to do by refusing to hold a properly petitioned call for a special national congress.
Since 2012, September, no single resolution that has been taken off the ground. And capitalists or employers are enjoying that particular practice out there.
COSATU says legal action is unnecessary as a decision has already been taken.
They came back to us and says, can't we get a out-of-court settlement, which we agreed because there's nothing to fear. We said we've already agreed to convene a special national congress.
Distrustful of COSATU, the 8 affiliates are forging ahead with the application. Montlengeni Dipoku, SABC News, Johannesburg.
President Jacob Zuma and Russian President Vladimir Putin have held bilateral discussions in Moscow. They met on the sidelines of festivities to mark the 70th anniversary of the end of World War II. President Zuma made an impassioned appeal for patriotism following the parade.
The Victory Day of the Great Patriot, almost every Russian family was affected. For South Africa, lessons to be learned.
I hope people could learn the national feeling, the patriotism, is one of the most important elements to determine even the development of the country. Because you know I'm developing my country for generations to come. It moves away the individualism and self-interest that people focus on. at the expense of the national interest.
Alongside the celebrations, engagements with other leaders, Presidents Zuma and Putin discussed bilateral relations, agriculture and energy topping the agenda.
One of the issues discussed very seriously was agriculture. That issue is an issue that they are very keen that we should play a role, and it could produce a situation where we could export to Russia more than them exporting to us that kind of commodity.
With relations between Russia and the West tense over the Ukraine crisis, Russia is increasingly looking towards other friendly nations to boost trade relations. The two presidents are expected to meet again later this year. The BRICS summit will take place in Russia. This will see a further consolidation of trade relations between the two countries. Mzwandile Lembeji, SABC News, Moscow, Russia.
Well, today the 2015 Tourism Indaba draws to a close. Minister of Tourism Derek Hanekom says the country's recent spate of xenophobic attacks has not been a threat to this year's Tourism Indaba. 24 destinations across Africa have been represented on the trade show floor at the Indaba in Durban. Tourism and Environmental Affairs in the Free State, Sam Mashini, says his department is engaging with neighbouring countries, Lesotho, to try and reduce illegal immigration. Free State, we are joined now from the Free State Tourism Authority by Khotso Tsolwe. Khotso, good morning and thank you for joining us from Durban today.
Good morning.
I'm sure there's a lot still happening in Durban, but I can just ask you, as being there from the Tourism Authority of the Free State, let's just speak about what was mentioned in terms of your tourism market in the Free State, and what are some of those exciting things that you will be looking at this year?
Thank you. In 2012, we introduced what we call the Free State Big Five as a concept and a strategy going forward. This year, what we are doing is we are attaching product to those routes. As a result, we brought product owners to come and promote or sell their products. The idea of the Big Five routes really is to package different experiences for a potential tourist. We believe that the topography of the province lends itself to packaging as we are a drive tourism destination. So it's important for us, therefore, to make it worth a tourist's while to visit the Free State. And that's why we are packaging that. So going forward, the projects that we are coming with, one would be to increase our product offering, and two, to make sure that the events that we have been having attract more numbers to the province. And really that's where we're going. That's the plan going forward.
Khotso, we know that the Free State borders with Lesotho, and we cannot forget about the recent xenophobic attacks that we've seen. What type of engagement are you fostering as the Free State to deal with illegal immigration that you've been dealing with in the province for so long?
Fortunately, as Free State, we haven't experienced xenophobia. But having said that, it doesn't mean we have not done anything to make sure that it doesn't happen in the province. The Premier, with his executive, has been engaging our neighboring countries, but also developed a strategy to make sure that we are ready if there is that eventuality. But we do believe that we do not have, there's a less opportunity or likelihood of that happening in our province.
Well, if you feel that it is under control, that is some good news indeed. If we can just end with, how do you think that with the Indaba, you will reposition the Free State and grow its tourist place of choice, you know, different to any of the other provinces that we see?
We are not competing. I want to believe that we are offering a different experience to the potential tourist. To that effect, we are saying the 9 provinces should rather be working together rather than be competing. And therefore, we are signing MOUs with our sister provinces to say, let's share the cake, tourism cake, by making sure that the tourists not only experience the same thing all the time, but also we do what we call cross-marketing, and suggest to the potential tourists to visit other provinces to enjoy a different experience. So our plan is really to work together with our sister organizations and provinces to make sure that the world experience the whole of South Africa and not a few provinces.
Well, thank you very much, Khotso, for joining us from Durban today, where the Indaba is taking place. That's Khotso Towe from the Free State Tourism Authority, just, you know, putting us in light with what the Free State plans and what they've been discussing at the Indaba over the weekend. Now, Newsroom is broadcast live from our studios in Auckland Park in Johannesburg every weekday morning between 9 and 10 a.m. We also stream live on YouTube at that time, with the show available on demand on our YouTube channel. This is SABC News. You've been watching Newsroom, where we love it in the morning.